This is Will Tchakirides interviewing Hanif Haynes, also known as Hanif, for the HBCU Radio Preservation Project. It is May 14th, 2024, 1:26 p.m. in the afternoon. This interview is being recorded at WHCJ Studios at Savannah State University in Savannah, Georgia. All right, let's begin. Tell me your full name and what your role is here at WHCJ.
Greetings. My name's Hanif Haynes. I'm a volunteer at Savannah State. I host a radio program, a reggae program. It's called the Black Starliner.
What was it called again? I'm sorry.
The Black Starliner.
Black Starliner. And before we even get into any questions, explain the significance of the name Black Starliner.
Well, historically, the Black Starliner is the first all-black owned shipping company. There was the White Starliner. Marcus Garvey, Jamaican-born, organized the first all-black shipping company. He organized the UNIA. The Black Starliner was just one of the venture. The Black Starliner was organized basically to connect Africans and Africans across the Atlantic and America industrially and commercially.
Thank you for that. All right, we'll get back to the significance of the Black Starliner and your program. First, where are you from, Hanif? And tell me when you were born and where, and a little bit about the place you grew up.
Okay, now we're going off into another rim. I'm from a small community in Savannah, Georgia, called Pinpoint. Historically, Pinpoint is the first community in unincorporated Chatham County to be designated as historic.
So, if I were to... Oh, and sorry, what year were you born?
Oh, I was born in 1954. And
tell me a little bit about the people who raised you.
Well, I once again, growing up in the community of Pinpoint, a Gullah community where it has always been said that it takes a village to raise a child. The people that raised me up, they're all dead and gone now, but I still feel their presence as far as, how we were brought up, how we were raised. I was raised in a community where manners played a big role in your early development. Home training, there was a saying that home training and manners will take you around the world. And I experienced that when I was in Ethiopia, Africa. My mother passed away. Met a family that I've never seen, but they spoke a little English, and yes ma'am and yes sir got me a long way. This family took me in, fed me, consoled me. So, but growing up, being once again mannerable, with those particular qualities, those older people, I can hear them always telling me now, son, you may not understand it now, but you'll understand it by and by, or you'll understand it later. And a lot of the grooming, that I was raised under, kind of got me to where I am today.
Yeah, thank you. We'll talk a little bit more about Gullah. But first, what was your mother's name, and when did she pass?
My mother's name was Teresa. I grew up with a single parent. Um, well, I say single parent, but once again, the whole family raised me. She passed around 1991.
Did you have siblings, or do you have siblings?
Yes, I do have siblings. I have one daughter. I have two daughters and two sons.
Any brothers and sisters for you?
And I do have two brothers.
Okay.
No sisters, two brothers.
Now, so tell me a bit more about Gullah Geechee culture. I'm less familiar, so I'd love to learn from you as someone who's raised in it.
Great. Gullah Geechee, we are the descendants, and when I say we, I'm talking about African Americans, basically who are located in southeast region of the United States, Georgia and Carolina, the Low Country. We are descendants of those Africans that were brought here in the 1800s, basically for their knowledge and expertise in the cultivation of rice. Now, we come from along the rice coast of West Africa, but a lot of us can trace our ancestral heritage back to Ghana, Guinea, Sierra Leone, and those countries that make up what we call the rice coast of West Africa.
And here in Georgia, South Carolina, other areas of the Low Country, where does the legacy of those cultures on the rice coast in Africa show up in this place?
Well, cuisine.
Okay. Say more there.
Yeah. If you were in the Low Country or in Chatham County, rice was a major staple. Rice 3 times a day in most cases. But you see in the cuisine, we have a dish that's basically unique to Gullah Geechee. Everybody here, people prepare this dish, but it's basically Gullah Geechee, and it's called Hop and John. It's a dish that consists of peas in rice. Now, don't be mistaken of Jamaica's rice and peas. And it is distinctly different, peas in rice. Now, most non-Gullah Geechee African Americans and other people, when they cook Hop and John, they use black-eyed peas. But a truly Gullah Geechee or Geechee Gullah would use red peas. It's a peas that was cultivated on the Berry Islands, that was cooked in the rice. And this dish was generally used for good luck and for one to gain some financial stability in the new year. And it was eaten at New Year for good luck and prosperity. Hop and John, that's just one dish. If I can, I'll make reference to a 7-part series. I think it's still on Netflix. It's called High on the Hog.
That's a recent series?
Recent, I was within the past 5-6 years.
Yeah.
Yes.
And does that delve a little bit deeper into the culture?
It in the culinary aspect of the culture.
What about language?
Language, and the language is the reason why all of this came about. There was a linguist by the name of Dr. Lorenzo Dow Turner in the 30s who was interested in preserving the culture and the language of the local people in the Carolinas. Dr. Turner wrote a book call African people, or African, pause that for a minute. Dr. Turner was studying the people in the Low Country and in Georgia. And as a result of the study, he wrote a book, Africanism in the Gullah Dialect. And he was showing his colleague that these people in the Low Country and in Georgia did have a culture, they did have a language. What we know as Gullah Geechee is a creolized form or language, and it infuses a little bit of English, a little bit of French, a little bit of this and that, because the Africans, when they were first enslaved and they were brought here, they were basically segregated so that one tribe couldn't communicate with another tribe, and it was all intentionally. So this language and this culture that's preserved in the Low Country in Georgia is a result of those ancestors that were enslaved here in the 1800s.
How did folks preserve the language? What were some tactics? What was strategy to maintain culture within the face of this?
Well, one of the and I won't say a tactic, but Gullah Geechees were generally those Africans that were isolated. They were in isolation. We're here in the studio, but we can't see any of the barrier islands out here. Most of what we know as the Gullah Geechee people were isolated on these barrier islands. And in that isolation, they were able to preserve the culture and the language and all the traditions from their ancestors. And when I say isolation, there were Africans that didn't come to these islands. White people didn't come to these islands. So they, living in this isolation, they were able to preserve. Now, this language, I'm told, is being taught at Harvard now.
Since you have studied, your people and where your family comes from and this history, so what happened to the Gullah Geechee people post-emancipation?
And we're still facing land loss. Mm-hmm. A lot of challenges where now a lot of people who I would say ancestors who have inherited Gullah Geechee property, things are beginning to be a little different now, but the land became a commodity. So I could sell this land and get a little money for it now. I can make a profit off of it. And we're losing lots and lots of our land by people selling property because they don't have a historical connection to the property. And what we say is the individuals don't have Sankofa, which is a Ghanaian word that means to go back and fetch it. It's from the tweet. Okay, you have a symbol right there. Usually there's a stylized heart and the Sankofa bird looking back with an egg in its mouth.
Yeah, so history is important.
History is important. And one of the other challenges, and this was here recently in the news, Hilton Head, where developers was trying to force this elderly lady out. She finally passed, but she won her case. Tyler Perry built the family a brand new house. in Georgia here, on one of our Berry Islands. It's called Sapelo Island. After emancipation, indigenous people were left a parcel of land that's called Hog Hammock. And now developers are threatening, the existence of the Gullah Geechee culture on Hog Hammock. Council members voted for rezoning, and now where property once again is a commodity, now people can buy this property and they can build these elaborate homes on this parcel of property that was set aside for the freedmen. Those are a lot of the challenges that's being experienced by Gullah Geechee people up and down the Gullah Geechee corridor.
Yeah, because it's been a minute since I've studied this, but is that not one of the spaces that the Freedmen's Association or the federal government actually set aside some land for recently emancipated folks?
Well, we're going back to emancipation, 1865. Well, Sherman came through,
March to the sea.
and a lot of people see him as a big hero, but a lot of us in the African American community. But I'm not going to get into that. But Sherman met with 20 black clergymen downtown Savannah at the Green Meldrum House, and that's where the Special Field Order Number 15 was formalized and signed.
And that's the 40 acres and a mule language.
That
right?
was the 40 acres and a mule. However, that didn't last very long because Andrew Johnson rescinded this. Now the government reneged on another promise, and most of these formerly enslaved men and women are displaced now.
And lost their land.
They lost their land. But what we know as the Gullah Geechee Heritage Corridor is basically that same land geography that was set aside by Sherman for the freedmen and women.
And how far back does your mother did she trace her ancestry in this place, and where had she lived in her life?
Well, as far as I know, Pinpoint is the only place that my mother lived. And as far as tracing ancestry, we can go back to, my great-great-great-grandfather.
In that place?
No, they were enslaved prior to coming to Pinpoint. They were enslaved on a Berry Island called Ossabaw, Ossabaw, which translates into the land of the holly or something like that. This was a Berry Island that was owned by a gentleman by the name of John Morrell at the particular time. There were 4 plantations.
Rice plantation.
Not so much rice, but more in the early days, it was timber, indigo, and then cotton.
So those were the staples. That was what was being farmed.
Yeah, and in the early days, he started off with timber. He ventured into selling deer hide, and then indigo. Then it was the Sea Island cotton that was the big staple.
And then in your lifetime and growing up in Pinpoint, how would you characterize the economy?
Now, growing up in Pinpoint, from we say the early 1800s when my ancestors settled in Pinpoint, or the late 1800s, out on the Berry Islands while they were enslaved and as freedmen, they were agriculturalists. once they came to the mainland or settled in the community, what we call Pinpoint, they started focusing on the salt marshes, where they focus on blue crabs and oysters and shrimp. The community no longer, the last seafood processing plant shut down in 1985. Basically, we have more community members or younger people who are better educated now than at that particular time. So we have we have at least one Supreme Court justice that came out of the community, but we have a lot of self-owned businesses that people operate. We have educators, pastors, nurses. We do, so as far as the economy, there's no set economy for the community. But
I imagine tourism is developed a little bit.
Well, tourism develop, but it's not directly connected to the community. As of a couple of weeks ago, we applied for a government fund through our neighborhood association called Justice 40, but we were denied because our community now is being associated with surrounding communities where the median mean of income is better than $150,000 to $200,000.
So, gentrification, displacement.
Yes, but
some folks might be professionals who
right
could afford, but
yeah. But so as far as the community, there are a lot of retired people, but for younger people, most are educators, are self-employed.
And you mentioned that Supreme Court justice. Were they from your home?
He was born and raised in the community, but he left at a real early age, between 6 or 7, and lived in Savannah with his grandparents.
Okay, yeah. We're talking about Clarence Thomas.
Yeah.
Was music on in the house when you were a young person?
Spiritual.
How would you
or
describe it?
Religious music. I grew up in the church. My great granduncle my great great granduncle was the pastor of the community church at that particular time. So I grew up listening to, quote, Baptist, good old Southern Baptist gospel music.
And I was talking with Ike Carter earlier, and he said, spiritual music is not to be confused with gospel music. Do you make a distinction?
Exactly. No, there's a big difference to me in spirituality, gospel, and religion, and, some people never reach spirituality. So I'm in agreement with Mr. Carter.
And describe the musical style, spiritual music.
Well, then, we had more of, it was good time. There were quartets. As a matter of fact, I grew up, my brother led a group called the Pinpoint Gospelaires. There were no musicians, so nobody knew. It was one guy that played a guitar, and they started a gospel quartet. But he left the community, so there's nobody to play an instrument. So now what these guys have to do now, they're singing a cappella. And as a matter of fact, they performed for the Today Show out at Davenport Park several years ago.
Wow.
So the music, yeah, up, up, upbeat type music. You know,
Did your mother listen to music?
basically gospel music.
And did any members of the extended family community, was there anyone who was a kind of a great influence when it came to music?
No, not really. And back in those days growing up, I don't know if Mr. Carter mentioned this or not, but there wasn't but one radio station. It was an AM black station, WSOK. And
That based in Savannah?
yes, and maybe later on in the interview, I'll talk a little bit about how someone from that station influenced me. But that's what everybody listened to. You can hear the gospel music coming in, but that was, and then there were a lot of gospel concerts that used to come to Savannah, Mahalia Jackson and, groups like that.
What schools did you attend?
I attended elementary school. There was a historic school that's no longer in existence called Haven Home. I attended first grade there, and then I was transferred over to Thunderbolt to Saucy Johnson, but they had an elementary component that they called Power Lab. So and I went to Power Lab, then Johnson, doing integration, and desegregation, all of that came along.
When is that happening?
Officially, I think it was sometime in the 60s, because my brother and a cousin, they were the first three to desegregate a school, Herschel V. Jenkins. So that was in the 60s. But, and I later was transferred from Johnson in my senior year. I wanted to go in my junior year, but my mom said, no, you're going back to that school that you started at. But I graduated from Jenkins in 72.
That was high school?
High school. Didn't have the means to go to college, so I joined the military.
Which branch?
The Army. I only stayed in for 2 years. I didn't like the military. I was a soldier when I was there, but when my time was up, I got out. And
did you tour abroad?
No, I'm glad I didn't. I was a scout when I was in the military, and I didn't even look forward to going anywhere, because anywhere they wanted to send me was either a war going on or it was too cold, and I didn't want either.
Where were you based during that time?
Well, I basic training at Fort Jackson, advanced training at Fort Knox, and I ended up at Fort Hood in Dallas. Fort Hood, Texas.
How did you like Texas? How did it compare to where you were from?
Texas is huge. And I thought we had humidity here. But, when I first went to Texas, I said, oh, man, I'm going to Texas. It's warm year-round. What a rude awakening for me. My flight landed in Dallas, Texas. It was 18 degrees. And Texas got cold, just like Savannah, and rainy and hot and muggy, just like Savannah. But I think I'd rather be in Savannah.
Yeah, I imagine a lot of time on base too. And did you have time to get out at all during that tour or stay?
That was a long time ago, but I did visit small. Well, they're not small cities anymore, but at the time, places like Waco, and a lot of these I watch Western movies a lot, and I said, okay, yeah, I remember that little town,
And there's a lot going on in the country and in the world during that time when you're finishing up high school and entering the military. What do you remember about that time politically and socially in the country? And did you involve yourself in any protest of any sort?
No, because growing up in the small community of Pinpoint, we were somewhat isolated and shielded. But my brothers, they were very active in the voters' right, voters' registration, and things like that.
Did they join like SNCC or anything like that?
No, but they did join NAACP. A lot of them spent time in jail while out, protesting. And
Yeah.
I did a little protesting on campus. We organized a group, an offshoot of SNCC, but it was just for change on campus for students. It wasn't anything political outside of the campus that we were involved in.
That was the terrain of struggle. Here on Savannah, at Savannah State?
Yes.
And did you eventually attend Savannah State after leaving the military?
I attended Savannah State. I didn't graduate from Savannah State, but I attended Savannah State for several years.
It's in the mid-'70s?
No, this was in the 80s, mid-'80s, I believe. I was studying electrical engineering technology, but professionally, I'm retired, but I did own an electric company, and I retired from Gulfstream Aerospace, but I never finished college.
How long did you work for that company?
I intended to work 5 years, but I ended up working about 23 years.
Yeah. Okay, so what did you do after you got out of the Army?
That's when I started pursuing a career. First couple of years in trade school, in some type of school. Didn't really know what I wanted to do at that particular time. So it was about almost 10 or 11 years before I even thought about going to college, after high school.
And tell me a little bit about outside of work. What do you like to do for fun? How do you like to spend your time as a young person, as a young adult?
Once again, then and now basically the same. I'm a saltwater African, so anything dealing with saltwater, I'm involved with it.
You like to fish?
I love fishing. As a matter of fact, I went fishing yesterday. But that's basically when I was younger, played softball, baseball, but started getting into sports where I can be an individual, and I like cycling and fishing and being a radio announcer.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. Where and when did you develop an interest in radio?
Now, that's an interesting story, and I think this is the first time that this story's ever been told or recorded. Around 1983, as a student here at SSU, there was a young lady at the time of the station. The station was only about 10 or 15 watts at the time, but a young lady by the name of Vonette Good was the manager, and she was soliciting volunteers to run the radio station. So one of my classmates, and I was living on campus, he came up to the room. "You want to work at the radio station?" I said, "Yes, but there's some stipulations." So now I'm trying to find an avenue to play reggae, because there was no such thing as reggae. So I started a jazz program, a blues program, and a gospel program. And
These are all separate shows?
yeah, these were all separate shows. And living on campus had the time to come in and do these programming. And as time passed on, my first reggae show, well, I don't think, I got 1 hour reggae for the 3 hours of the other shows, other programming. And it was called Hanif's Reggae Hour. So that went along for several years, and we got an official station manager. I think her name was Miss Carol Gordon. She was one of the anchors for one of the local television station. But anyway, under Carol, I think we got a little bit more power, a little bit more wattage, and we began to get more volunteers in. So I'm kind of easing my way out of the gospel programming, because I love to do my jazz and the blues. So, but we eventually got people to handle all of that. So now I can devote all of my time to the reggae program. So a colleague of mine has a program in Charleston called Roots Music Karamu, who actually got me started with this. And I said, okay, well, I have to graduate. I have to move up. So I have to give this program a different name, a different title. And it has to be something culturally orientated and significant to the culture. Being a Garveyite, studied Marcus Garvey. Why not the Black Starliner? So I had the Roots Music Karamu coming out of Charleston, and then in Savannah I had the Black Starliner. Still only about 15 watts or so people, only a handful of people could listen. And that continued. And then there was, I made reference to WSOK earlier. Miss Carol Gordon left, and the station was void of a manager. And then there was a lady by the name of B. Bond. Anybody ever heard or listened to WSOK know of B. Bond? I never had any type of radio training, nothing to do with radio, didn't know anything about radio. But Miss Bond, before you could go on the air, you had to do a production tape. And she critiqued you, and I hated the lady. I hated her with a passion. And then I got to know her. And people, when I'm out in public doing public engagement, people said, where did you get your degree from? What school did you attend? You speak so eloquently. I said, no, none of the above. But before we could go on air, she wanted perfection, and if it wasn't produced right, you couldn't put your program on air. So it was Miss B. Bond. I owe a lot to her, as far as speaking professionally. I owe a lot to her. And I think after Miss Bond, I think that's when Mr. Carter came along about that particular time. And Mr. Carter was doing the blues and jazz and also. And before Mr. Carter was doing the blues, there was another gentleman from WSOK. And these are older people now I'm talking about. I used to listen to him when I was young. His name was Casanova B. Jones. He did the blues. And he always come on the radio. My name is Casanova B. Jones, down by the railroad track. And when I got to meet him here, I mean, it was like meeting a legend. So that's basically, my adventure with the radio. And I wanted to quit years and years and years and years ago. But, I'm walking out. And as a matter of fact, when I was working at Gulfstream, I'm walking down the hall talking with some people out of the office, and someone heard my voice and tapped me on the shoulder and says, "You the guy that be on the radio?" And now I'm kind of afraid. Who's this? Oh, yes, I'm the gentleman. I'm the guy that's on the radio. And, we love the program, blah, blah, blah. So that gave me the initiative to stay on a little while longer. And it's the passion and, especially being at an HBC, this radio station is an extension of the community. And
can you say more about that? Just what the significance of working in HBCU radio means to you?
Well, yeah, as like I said, it's an extension of the community, especially with offering a diverse program format. Station like this particular station at HBCUs, all across the board, and I can speak for WHCJ. There is all type of cultural programming, and they're educational, entertaining, motivating, thought-provoking, all at the same time. We offer Latin programs, hip-hop programs, and of course, jazz, blues, reggae, and then you have the individuals. Everybody put their own little twist on, So there's a program for every audience out there, and it's a way, once again, to connect with the community. And now that we have internet capacity, we connect with the whole world.
And what about outside of the music, as a space of public affairs and social commentary? How do you connect with your audiences and your community members on that level, or do you?
Well, more than likely I do, but once again, I'm a community leader, and I wouldn't say that it's through the radio that I connect. 'Cause a lot of people know me and still don't know that I have anything to do with a radio program, but I'm connected, with a lot of different community organizations.
Well, talk about some of those organizations.
Well, right now, the Pinpoint Betterment Association is partnered with Georgia Tech, Savannah State, and another organization called the Harambe House. But we have collaborated together and put together a hub, and we're still working on it, and we call it the SEER Hub, Coastal Equity and Resilience, and that's to help and assist, underprivileged communities in, attaining some of the goals that these different communities have, and working with different challenges. In the inner city Savannah, there's a lot of environmental issues that are going on.
Can you describe some of those environmental issues?
Well, we have one community that's called Ogeechiton. There's a concrete plant that's in the center of the community, and for years and years now, the communities have been affected by the dust from making this concrete. And Georgia Tech, and I'm not too much on the technical aspect of it, but they're working with these sensors, air monitoring sensors that we were able to put in these communities, because when these communities address these issues with, the powers that be, they want proof. And so Georgia Tech, that's how they've been assisting in a lot of ways on the technical side.
Kind of measure the air quality and the pollution.
Measuring the air quality, and the west side communities like Hudson Hill and the other areas, we are working with the downtown big businesses like the Georgia ports, Union Camp, who they're right at the back door of these communities. You got groundwater pollution, air pollution, noise pollution, especially with the diesel trucks, they're driving directly through the communities, emitting all of this bad stuff from the diesel. But those are some of the initiative that I'm somewhat connected to.
And am I mistaken, you're also involved with the Pinpoint Heritage Museum?
I was employed by the Coastal Heritage Society as interpreter, and but I've kind of weaned myself away from that. I helped start or the opening of the Pinpoint Heritage Museum about 11, 12 years ago. But I'm sort of kind of weaning myself. I work on a as-need basis, but, once again, my time now is centered around community organization and community development.
How did your skills as an engineer or working as Gulfstream, you said?
Mm-hmm.
How did your time working for that company influence your time in radio, and how did your time in radio influence the work you did for that company? Did any skill transfer that you can sense?
No.
Completely different areas.
No, it's completely different. Gulfstream, 100% corporate, whatever it takes. Once the whistle blow, it's, the business aspect, all of that's over with. Now I'm dealing with the social aspect.
Two different sides of your mind. Okay, well then, how about the work that you do in your community in Pinpoint and some of that cultural memory work and cultural preservation work, and that relationship to doing, music programming?
Well, I really, as I don't realize it, but see, all of this, there's no training, no technical, nothing other than what I received from Miss B. Bonds. But it doesn't transfer into anything that I'm doing out there community-wise, other than if there's something centered around music, I give an input or something like that. But no.
Well, how about
this is unique. and especially that it's volunteer. It's once again that upbringing and values. If there was a connection, it would be the spirituality part of it.
Oh, interesting. Say more about that.
So, and why I say that, I program reggae music, and a lot of people listen to reggae music, even much more now since Bob Marley movie came out. But a lot of people don't focus on the spirituality of the music, and the importance of how the music use history as a tool, or as the music is used as a tool to promote history, a correct part of history. There's a lot of our history has been whitewashed over, and it's inaccurate. But yeah, through the spirituality part of it. There was an article a gentleman did on CNN talking about how people see Bob Marley, seen the movie, and relate to the music and everything that's centered around it, but they didn't focus on the spirituality of it. And, Bob Marley himself, even though he was rough and tough kid, but it was the spirituality of all of those singers. They were very, very spiritually oriented. And as Marcus Garvey said, when they spoke of spirituality or religion, they look at it from an African perspective, not from a European perspective.
I mean, the music's almost a tool of political education, right, in its own right.
Yes, a big tool in political education all over Africa. And South Africa, there were, during the apartheid days, there were certain songs by Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, that couldn't be played. That couldn't be played. So, there's a lot of political aspect and political education in the music.
We'll get back to reggae in a second, but just because you mentioned apartheid, do you recall any political activism on campus here during the heights of the anti-apartheid movement in the 80s?
Yes. My history professor was my first cousin. I'll never forget it. And that's another story by itself. But his name was Benny Arkwright, but he changed his name. He's a devout Muslim, to Ahmed Bim Pionke, and he, along with some other activists on campus, we led not a demonstration but a march, and we marched down, and we got permission, everything was sanctioned, and I think we marched down Victory Drive or West Broad Street at the particular time. Now, I have pictures of it. I don't have any with me today, but that was one of the I think, that was probably the one only at that particular time where we did the march and people were, showing their displeasure in the apartheid system.
Was there much resistance from the people of Savannah?
No.
People joined in?
No, it wasn't a whole lot of resistance at all.
Back to reggae. Who are some of your favorite reggae artists aside from Marley and other Wailers?
Well, you have to look at me. I'm an older person. I'm like Mr. Carter. The artists that I grew up on, most of them have passed away now. But there are several, and there are a lot of new and upcoming artists. Some of them I don't even know. But I tend to gravitate to conscious music, and that's why I called the program roots music, or roots reggae music, because there's, you got all kind of reggae out there, and you could hear it on some of the other stations. But the title of the program, the Black Star Liner, historically informative, motivating, and showing the people truth and rights. Very entertaining, but at the same time, it can be political, but I don't make any political commentary. I let the song do all the commentary. But yes.
Yeah, who embodied that ethos?
Well, right now, like I said, there are a lot of younger singers coming up.
But back in the day, who were you playing?
Oh, well, Bob Marley, of course. And it was here on campus. Now, all of this transition took place on campus. And I'll go back from my childhood. We were listening to music in the house. I don't know, my brother, uncle, mother, somebody had a Harold Belafonte, Day-O, and I was hooked from then on.
So that's some of your earliest memory of
Yeah,
this?
that was the first thing close to reggae that I
Calypso.
Calypso. So now years and years pass, and R&B and all of that, but on campus here, and this was even before the radio program got started, I was listening to reggae, but I didn't really understand patois like I do today. In me being Gullah Geechee, I couldn't understand patois. And in my room over on, it used to be called Camilla Hubert, I don't know what it's called now, listening to Bob Marley, and I could understand what he was saying, and I ran out of the building because it was the spiritual part that, and he was singing something like, if you big tree, I'm a small axe. And, reading the Bible, and I'm studying to be a Rastafarian. And once I seen the lyric that was taken out of the Bible and put into a song, I said, okay, this is it. This is that spiritual part of this music that other music that I've had or was listening to didn't have. Had the entertainment, had all of that, but it didn't have the spiritual connection. And going back to childhood, growing up in the church, going every second Sunday, and you get to a point where, okay, what's next? Listening to reggae, quit going to church because I couldn't make a connection anymore. But then after listening to Bob, I made that spiritual connection, and it was like the light was turned on. And Bob Marley, Dennis Brown, or I should say the Wailers, Dennis Brown, Jimmy Cliff. Those were probably the first that, I made that connection with reggae. Bob Marley, definitely. And then the Wailers and the others.
Yeah, it's a great genre.
I go out to California every year, or there's a big festival, not Reggae on the River. Everybody says, Reggae on the River. No, it's called the Sierra Nevada World Music Festival. Way out of nowhere. You think reggae music is in the middle of wine-growing country. Farmland country, but people love reggae music.
Yeah, I'll share personally. It's the Harder They Come soundtrack was probably one of the most formative albums that I heard just as a young child. And
Yes.
fell in love with it myself, but I get it. Yeah, maybe less from the spiritual perspective and just the grooves.
Mm-hmm.
So, you mentioned Miss Bonds. Bon?
Bond, B-A-R-N-E.
Bon. Any other significant mentors who helped shape your style?
No. Miss Bond is basically, and Vonette Good gave the opportunity to come into the station.
And was Miss Good a paid employee, or was she a student manager?
No. She was a paid employee. Okay. I think I forget what school she graduated from, but it was just part-time because the radio station was just void because the last gentleman that was manager had either retired from the campus or whatever, and everything was just in kind of reestablishing the radio station.
Do you happen to know when this radio station was founded?
No, I don't know that history.
Yeah.
We
can find it out.
I came in to play reggae, and Savannah State gave me the opportunity to play reggae and present it to the city of Savannah, now to the world.
And what is the greatest challenge that you've faced during your time as a DJ here? It could be sort of, if there was ever like a natural disaster of any sort. We had a global pandemic pretty recently. Even if you wanted to talk about that, what kind of challenges have you faced as a programmer?
Well, the pandemic presented a big challenge because everybody got their own mic cover now. But and then actually we couldn't even come in the studio at one time. But fear was one of my biggest challenges, and I think I talked about this a few days ago with some people, professional people, that after 5, 6, 7 years of doing this, there was this feeling that, oh man, I'm gonna screw it up. I'm gonna mess it up, But then you get in here, get behind the mic, and it all goes away. But yeah. Oh no, one of the challenge was a song that I played, and they wanted to ban the song off of the radio, and they were going to ban me. And I think I let the audience know about it, and I said, "This is reggae. This is the culture, and this is how it was done." But it was a Christmas song. I think it was Peter Broggs, and it was the 12th day of Christmas, and it had something like, on the first day of Christmas, Jaja say to me, plant yourself a ton of sensi, or something like that. And back then, anything that mentioned any type of paraphernalia or anything like that was a problem.
Or the plant itself.
Yeah, with management. And I started playing Peter Tosh, Legalize It, and oh my God. But with the people out there listening and calling in and responding,
Who's calling in? Community members or administration at the university?
No, community members calling in. Yeah.
And they're concerned that you're advocating for drug use? Is that?
No. They're calling in defending, the music.
Gotcha.
And what was being played.
So who the threat is coming down from the university?
Right, and not all of the administration, but immediate management.
Gotcha. how has being a reggae music programmer benefited your life? How has it in your own view improved your life and enriched your life?
Travel, meeting people from different cultures, from different parts of the world. Yeah, that's basically, growth, and meeting people.
And what about like spiritually and raising your consciousness and whatnot?
Well, it helped after a period of time. I told you I started college, and this was probably in '83 when I started college, and yeah, I started this program when I started out here. The consciousness that was always, well, not always a conscious person, but studying, and all of this go back to church once again, reading the Bible, reading about the blackness in the Bible, and after I got to a point, church couldn't take me to the next step. And when listening to Bob Marley and I heard the Bible verse, then naturally, now I'm propelled to a higher elevation now, because this music that I like is very spiritual orientated. So now, and this is when I came into the knowledge of a black prince that was elevated to these certain titles that was bestowed on him, and I'm talking about Haile Selassie. In the 1930s, when he was coronated, I would say, and I'd go out on a limb to say, 80% of Black America didn't have a clue. And I would say, I'd be a little bit more modest. I would say 60% of African Americans still don't know anything about coronation of a black king.
What's the significance? Tell us on mic here.
Well, it's all goes back to Marcus Garvey once again, as being credited as making this prophecy about this black king that would be crowned, and he'll be your deliverer. And after researching and reading and growing up, being accustomed to seeing, I think it's Michelangelo's image of what we call Christ, this image that we call Christ, and then relating back to the Bible, and going to church, it didn't make that connection. But after listening to reggae music, reading history, and all of a sudden there's this entity that looks just like me. And, studying Marcus Garvey once again, planting the seeds of, if Europeans have a European God, well, Africans should have a God that looked like him. So the divinity of Haile Selassie comes into being, and I'm not going to get into, all of that, but the significance of a black king. And, we are bombarded every day about the queen and the king. But like I said, 60% of African Americans probably didn't even know that Africa had kings and queens, great kings and queens.
Thank you.
And through that, the music, you learn things like that.
Learn that history. Eventually the station's reach extended beyond the campus community, probably got down to Pinpoint, right? Eventually?
Now, well, being that geographically we're located back in that direction, so the tower is right here. So naturally, anything within this area, it was no problem. The load 15 watts, and then if the wind's blowing in the right direction, you could pick it up.
So I'm wondering just how were your programs received in your hometown, in your home area? Do you have a fan base there?
I take a quote from the Bible: "A good man is only without honor in his own hometown."
Okay.
I don't know what verse it is, but it's one of the proverbs.
So it's
now
complicated.
I do have not everybody, but there's a lot of people, and like I said, surprisingly, I was at a funeral. Everybody sobbing and carrying on, and I had a cousin to come up there. Boy, every time you get on that radio, my husband, hey, the TV is shut off, everything is shut off. I got to listen to you on that program. So there are people, there, and a lot of the younger guys, they listen to reggae. There's one gentleman, he passed away as a young man, and every once in a while, I'll dedicate, there was a song by Ika Mouse. He loved Ika Mouse for some reason, and I'll play a song in memory of him. But yeah, there's a small community base, but the picture is much larger than my community or myself. So
Yeah, you said it goes worldwide.
There are people in Europe, I guarantee you right now, I don't know how they do it with the time difference, but listen royally.
Well, that's the power of radio and digital radio. The scale can increase
yes.
so much. What are you proudest of in your time doing radio?
Being able to expand the program from 1 hour to 4 hours, 8 hours a week. When I tell other programmers, you got that much time playing reggae? Yes.
So being able to grow it, and that allows you to continue to
and
have the freedom to shape the program.
Right.
And we'll move towards the end of the interview here, but one thing we do want to ask our narrators is what they think of us and the work we're doing as the HBCU Radio Preservation Project. And I think if I could just frame it a little bit, right, it's, I'm thinking about the significance of cultural memory and preserving a past in, say, Pinpoint and among the Gullah people, right? HBCU Radio, it has a history, and and it's vulnerable, and it's under threat just like any other institution. Why does it matter that we're doing this work?
I think it matters because most HBCs or HBCUs are funded by the state. They don't see the significance in radio programming or because of the digital age now, a lot of people don't even have radios or where they can tune in. But being able to, once again, connect with the community, a lot of the administration and regents, they would see this program cut than supporting it, but I don't think they can physically put their hands on or see the value of HBCU's radios connecting with the community. It's another avenue of communication, and by preserving the voices of the past and the present. You know, you have evidence of how important the radio station, is, and then you look at the staffing. 95% of the staff are volunteers. So these community members coming, sharing their time with their personal music, to be able to communicate and to share with the community. Generally, they will not have this platform for either conversation. Mr. Carter, they have a program called Listen Here. It's a jazz program where they get together and dissect this music. And I'm listening to these guys, and the ladies. And, you will not get that on a regular radio station unless you have to pay for it. And, public radio station from HBCUs, they offer that platform where you can get informative programming and educational programming without, costing your arm and a leg.
And is that the key difference from commercial radio? Is that
That's a
authenticity?
it's a big key from commercial radio, where I think the commercial radios are bound to promoting a certain sound, where, here, the HBCUs could promote a sound that you will not generally hear, or the sounds that the commercial station bypass. You get the opportunity to hear it here. I mean, there's several programmings that, I can call that's programmed, especially at this particular HBCU radio station. You won't get anywhere else.
Do you ever listen to other college radio stations?
Basically, that's how I started this, because I lived in Tallahassee for a couple of years, and I used to listen to, I don't know what the call signal is, but FAMU. And they had the first Cannonball Adderley Jazz Festival. I think Cannonball is from Tallahassee or somewhere down there. But it's very hard to find a good college or radio station or public radio. I listen to public radio all the time, and they have some programming, but not like we have or at this particular HBCU. So, I mean, you guys recording, I always use one of Marcus Garvey's quote when it comes to African people. People without the knowledge of their history is like a tree without roots. So if individuals don't have the opportunity or the knowledge to listen or to study what went on prior to what's happening now, they can't even make a comparison.
One last question is just, is there anything that we have not had the opportunity to discuss that you want to make sure that you get on this recording? Any people you want to shout out?
Well, Miss Curry, Mr. Carter, those past and present. I've seen a lot of people came to this radio station. Several of them are passed on. Just shout out to their memories. And to SSU.
All right. Well, Hanif, it's been a pleasure to talk with you today. I really appreciate your time and your willingness to share your story with the project, and we wish you the best on any future endeavors.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share my story.
Thank you.